Hey all, Scott here. To buy video games right now, I have to leave my room. Now I could always buy video games online on Amazon or just straight digitally, but come on. I need video games now, not in 1 to 2 days considering shipping and handling, and I love plastic shells. Who wants to do this? So that means driving 10 minutes to a brick and mortar store to buy physical games equals, fine, I'll go to GameStop. The video game store used to be a magical place as a kid. It was always something I looked forward to. I didn't even have to walk out with a new game or anything. Just browsing the games available and being surrounded by them was a treat. And when you did buy a new game, oh man, you pop that bad boy open on the road home to get a taste of what's in store. What does the disc look like? Reading through the manual, waft the wonderful smell of a freshly opened game. Sometimes that experience was more memorable than the actual game you bought. Before a trip to GameStop, I would rummage through the games I had and said, okay, I don't need this, this, or this. Bring them all there, get some sweet, sweet trading credit, and pick up some new games. Of course, now I hate this punk for selling his Game Boy Player for a copy of Just Dance 3, but back then, without a job, trading in games was just the way of life. Game stores were the place back then for me, but now what the hell happened here? I really wish video game stores could be more of a place to just kind of hang out and browse games, maybe even play them, but instead, whenever I go, I'm bombarded by my favorite question in all of retail. What brings you in today? I always follow that up with a just looking around, browse the games until I realize the pop figures take up more space than the Wii U section, and then leave empty-handed. Well, maybe I can learn to love video game stores again by working at one. My interview is, right now.
Hi, Chet Shaft, Game on a Shelf Manager.
Hi, Scott Wozniak, Games on a Shelf Employee to Be.
So, what makes you want to work at Games on a Shelf?
Well, I love plastic, and discs are great too.
You know, we're really looking for somebody who's into all different types of games. Are you that kind of guy?
I don't give a piss didn't do much for me, but it really didn't excite me. The title never interested me. It didn't look all too entertaining. I wasn't interested. It doesn't appeal to my taste. Doesn't really appeal to me. Not super into mobile games, way that makes me not care at all. I'm not an RPG guy, but I'm not a Xenoblade guy. I'm not really into it all.
I like the Wii.
Perfect, you're hired.
Personally, in terms of going to actual stores for video games, I prefer Best Buy. It's nice and big, you walk in there and browse the games without getting harassed by employees about joining a membership or pre-ordering games or whatever. At the very most, one will ask if you need help with anything or just say hi, and that's about it. However, they did have a sweet membership. Gamers Club Unlocked gave you 20% off all new games. Not new as in recently released, new as in basically any game on the shelf. It was only $30 for 2 years. That right there basically made Best Buy the only place I'd consider picking up games at. They don't offer the program anymore because holy how could they sustain a deal like that? To be fair, the 20% off games got me to buy a lot of non-video game stuff there, but I mean, 20% is still a lot off of products Best Buy already doesn't see a ton of profit from. Even without the membership, I just like Best Buy because I can pick up the game, bring it to the counter, bada bing, bada boom, I'm out of there. Places like Walmart and Target, oh god, those have got to be the bottom of the barrel in terms of my preferred game stores. Who the hell wants to wrangle up an employee and beg them to unchain Detective Pikachu for you? All the games are behind this glass door and you have to get an employee to unlock it for you, and it feels like whenever I actually want something, there's never anyone around to unlock it. You just kind of have to pace around until you see somebody. But of course, why go to those places when you can go to, GameStop is the definitive place to buy games for many people. It's simple. It's a game store. You go there to buy video games. I notice it's really popular with families. A mom will usually bring their kid there to pick out a game or to ask questions about something. But wow, GameStop can be annoying. I'm not trying to boycott them or say anybody who works there is a chump. No. It's good to have a store specific to video games, and I know for a fact most employees are perfectly fine people just trying to do a good job. And they're forced by their bosses to do all this annoying stuff, such as trying to cram a membership down your throat. They really like to push the Power Up Rewards program. It's just a standard membership. It's really not the craziest in the world. You get slight discounts on used games, some little benefits here and there, but that's about it. It comes with a subscription to Game Informer magazine, and they always ask if I want the digital or print version of Game Informer, and I'm like, I don't want Game Informer, I want the 70 cents off Darksiders 2!
You gotta be ruthless out there. You can't dance around them getting the membership card. Remember, you're not out there to make a friend. You're out there to make a sale. No manners, no subtlety.
Join our membership, Ed.
At least you get fun prizes for all the points you accumulate on the membership, which you can claim on this website. Oh my god, this place is barren. Anybody else remember going on the Power Up Rewards site and seeing all the different prizes you could redeem? It was always stuff like a Call of Duty beanie or whatever, but now it's just gift cards. I mean, it's whatever. When I used the site more often, the only rewards I picked were the gift cards, even when they had other trinkets available, so I don't really care. Now, one thing GameStop has over all other major retailers who sell games are the used games and trade-ins. Others have tried. I can't even finish that, they all failed. Like Walmart sells used video games. What? GameStop is universally known for selling used games at a cheaper price than new. Sometimes. GameStop's used game selection is always a mixed bag for me. First off, I'm not super big into the fact most of the DS games get their cases thrown away. I get it, the cases take up valuable space, but I don't know about anybody else, but if a game comes in a plastic DVD-like case, I need the case for it, I ain't buying it loose. This bugs me about a lot of used game stores in general, GameStop included of course, but it feels like they never put any effort into cleaning games. Many of the cases for GameStop's used games are just gross. How did it get this way? So they didn't have a standard PS4 case for this game, but for some reason they had the original game cover art, and on top of that, the battle scars this thing has taken is just too much to stomach. Most of the time, if they don't have the original box and cover art, GameStop just prints their own and uses a generic case. I mean, it's better than nothing. At least the GameStop cover art for Mario Tennis Ultra Smash is better than the actual game. Is there legitimately anybody out there who will buy the game with the GameStop cover when a copy with the original cover is available? Just curious. It's obvious GameStop likes to push used games. With new games, they don't make much of a profit off of them. Used games, non-stop profit. They buy a game off of you for like 20 bucks and sell it for 55. It's genius. The trading credit has always been a big problem for many. Like, here's how much a used copy of Spider-Man costs, and here's how much you get for trading it in. I mean, that bites, especially if you don't have a ton of money to spend on games. A lot of people definitely complain about trading credit, but I will say a lot of people complain for all the wrong reasons. I think too many people assume that they should get a ton of money for their garbage game nobody cares about anymore. Think about it for a second. Why are you trading in that game? It's because you don't want it anymore. Well, millions of other people didn't want Gears of War 3 anymore either. That's why it's only worth $1 and you get 25 cents for trading it in.
Hey man, listen, corporate makes us do this every year, but this is just a little manager evaluation form. You just fill it out, let them know how I'm doing, you know.
All right. Is your manager manipulative?
I'd say no to that if I were you. Hey, looks like we got some trade-ins coming in. Knock them dead.
All right, total trading value is gonna be $10.50.
Well, I got this Skylanders for the Wii U. How much is it now?
$10.48.
Of course, you could just sell your game on eBay, but that requires a lot more work and there's no guarantee it'll sell. GameStop will accept your game right then and there and give you at least some money for it. Not a lot, but since it's way less work for you than an eBay sale, I think it's fair to expect not a ton of money from trade-ins. It is convenient to have a well-known store that'll buy your used games, but this is still kind of ridiculous. Oh, you know another thing I hate about used games? These stickers are the worst. You may be able to peel them off perfectly one time, but just you wait until you get a stubborn one, and it is brutal. GameStop used to spank the stickers on the box art itself, not the plastic case. Major problem with that can ruin the art. At least on the box, if the sticker doesn't peel off correctly, you can just slap some Goo Gone on it or use a different case, but this isn't nearly as easy to get off of the art. And for some reason, GameStop likes to sell new games that aren't new. Like I bought Shenmue 1 and 2 for the PS4, and I bought a new copy. The problem was it was the last copy on the shelf, so they put a disc in the shelf copy, and there we go. I bought a new game that was open and unsealed. I didn't pay the used price, I still had to pay the new price. That's fun. They usually run deals like 4 for $20 on specific used games, and those specific used games are generally all-time classics like Disney Infinity 2.0 Game Only, MLB The Show 14, and Fling Smash. But my main problem with GameStop always boils down to the fact that they won't stop trying to sell me something. Hey, do you have anything you want to pre-order? They ask me as I'm trying to buy Chicken Shoot on the Wii.
Hey, the usual, right? One copy of We Play Motion to go.
Thanks, Chief. We gotta start pushing pre-orders more. Studies show that 9 out of 10 gamers play video games. We gotta capitalize on that market. Next customer you get, do not stop talking about pre-orders.
Pre-orders, am I right? It's like totally like you buy the 1S. It's just like
Most of the time, if I tell them I'm not interested in pre-orders, they'll list off a bunch of upcoming games and be like, interested now? And I'm like, I'm sorry man, I just want Chicken Shoot, just ring it up. I'll just casually browse games and a GameStop employee comes up and asks me for my membership info just to remind me of the points I have and to pre-order things. Listen, I love to talk to anybody who works at GameStop, as long as they don't make it so obvious they're just trying to sell me something. I've had a few perfectly decent conversations with some GameStop employees, and they've been delightful. They don't necessarily nudge me to buy anything I don't want, get any protection plan, pre-order anything, become a pro member, nothing. Just talking about games we like and ending things off with a solid take it easy. But 80% of the time at GameStop, all of this gets shoved in my face. And to reiterate, this mainly isn't pissing all over the employees themselves, because I know the heads of GameStop force them to act like this. The exact same heads that have turned GameStop into What is this place? This doesn't feel like GameStop anymore. The random merchandise takes up more space than the actual games now. It feels like I'm living inside of a loot crate. Nerf guns, toys, plushes. Many of them aren't even themed to gaming franchises, just standard geeky movie or comic book stuff. Now, I have no doubt this stuff is popular, but in terms of at GameStop itself, I have never seen anybody buy these knickknacks here. In fact, a lot of the time I see this kind of stuff in their clearance bins. At least it's better than when GameStop tried to shift their focus to smartphones. Yeah, that worked out for them. Now, of course, I may be saying this because of that virgin blood within me, but I think it would be smart for GameStop to start focusing a lot more on retro games. Now, they carry them online and at select locations, but come on, retro gaming is really big now, especially the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox generation. The kids who grew up with those consoles are at an age where they want to play them again, and instead of capitalizing on that, they're just gonna keep selling Naruto shirts. I hate the fact that retro games are mainly only available online. These are games you'd probably want to inspect before buying, but instead just buy them online. You'll find out if they come with the case and manual when you get them. I don't hate GameStop, but it's just not my preferred place to shop. It has annoying quirks, and as time goes on, the store just seems like it's becoming more and more not for me. I'd really recommend supporting independent mom and pop game stores. A lot of these places rock. They may give you better trading credits. They'll definitely have a bigger variety of systems and games spanning across so many more generations, and they probably won't be as in your face about junk you don't want. Better start supporting them soon though, because many of them keep on shutting down, and that's never fun.
Well, it's over. New store opened down the street. Some really steep competition. We just can't keep up with them.
I mean, I've had 5 people ask if we sell cigarettes. Maybe we should start taking trade-ins.
You think you know how to run a business? I know a guy with a NASA shirt, okay? I earned this job!
This is my peak. Well, after everything I've been through, I'm done. I'm not going to game stores anymore. I'll say it's because I'm protesting them, but it's really because I'm unemployed.
Bam, 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 bam. Hello and welcome to.
Obviously, no. No.
Whose child is this?
No, obviously, no.
Oh my lord.
The esports updates.
No! This is why they don't let pseudo-Europeans who lived in China who come from Portland drive.
New Spicy Lovers Pizza from Pizza Hut. Hurts so good. With its spicy marinara and sliced red chilies. It's like a roundhouse kick to the taste buds. How's it looking? Don't be bashful with the fiery flakes now. I want it to be real spicy.
I haven't started yet.
Okay, I'm ready. The new Spicy Lovers Pizza. Get it while it's hot. You want respect? Red chilies get you respect. No one out Pizza's the Hut.
Hey all, Scott here. 9 steps ago, I wanted to experience hardships and indigestion, but then I discovered this 9-step plan on how to successfully fail in the video game industry, and now I'm finally broke and depressed. So now it's time to spread that bankruptcy to you. Here's how to successfully fail as a video game studio. First off, please take a look at this. Yeah, I my pants too. This is some scary stuff. We want to do this, but fail. So maybe if we eliminate the N's, the T, the E, the D, the O, and throw in some A's, some C's, an L, and an M, well, son of a bitch, we have ourselves a role model. The video game industry can be tough stuff. These things take so much time, money, and manpower to put together. If one game a developer makes doesn't meet expectations, it could be enough to sink the whole ship. Because of that, many publishers believe new releases have to be strategically crafted and well thought out in order to make the most money possible. In-game purchases and microtransactions, day one DLC, collector's editions, gold editions, they will take any opportunity to milk the most out of people's excitement for a new game. It must be exhausting. Like, think about it. Would you really want to be a video game company? I tried being Activision once and it was hard. Nobody liked me, I was too scary, and I laid off over 800 people. It was the worst Halloween ever. But sometimes, even after layoffs and cost cutting, some studios don't make it far past that and get shut down, experiencing the worst fate possible, having the same company status as Acclaim. For some reason, it doesn't feel like Acclaim is gone. Now, that's a name that just screams video games. It's one of the first publishers outside of the main ones these days that I think of when the whole concept of video game company is brought up, and I don't know why. They were never a particularly great company. They published a few NBA Jams, the first 2 Burnout games, Turok, some console versions of Mortal Kombat, and a whole lot of licensed games. They filed for bankruptcy in 2004, and wouldn't you know, we haven't melted yet, so I guess Acclaim's existence isn't vital to our lives, but it's still hard to believe they haven't been around for that long. They're just an unforgettable name in the industry, just like Midway. Their name is tossed around a decent amount for a dead company, and that's because Warner Brothers bought up their assets after they went bankrupt in 2009 and still use their name for re-releases of their old arcade titles. With these 2 companies, their names are some of the bigger ones from gaming history, but looking at them both, it's pretty easy to see where things went wrong. Midway found most of its success in the arcades back in the 80s and 90s, so in my opinion, while mismanagement and poor decisions can be blamed for their bankruptcy, when they were forced to compete in the console market, it seemed like they were having a tough time trying to keep up with the competition. They had Mortal Kombat, but not much else. And Acclaim was just never really that great overall, so when standards of quality with video games went up, their profits went down. In retrospect, the death of a video game studio is pretty understandable and easily explained, but sometimes their demise comes out of nowhere. They just randomly get shut down, and that's always varying degrees of depressing. Even then, I'd say the idea of Atari becoming defunct has lost all meaning. Every time I open up the fridge, there's an article about Atari being bought or going bankrupt. This Atari, yeah, not the same as this one, or this one. The name has gotten traded around for years, so while Atari is still in existence, it has next to nothing to do with the Atari everybody knows from the 70s and 80s. This current Atari used to be Infogrames. Talk about a name I've seen hundreds of times but know nothing about. This looks like they wanted to call themselves Infogames. That name was already taken, so they went, yeah! Infogrames acquired Hasbro, which acquired Atari earlier, which they then renamed themselves to. Jesus. Hasbro Interactive's gone too, man. Who else is gonna make the game of life for PC in 1998? But that's just what happens a lot of the time. Many game developers and publishers are no more, but live on because of mergers or acquisitions. Sometimes meaning the studio still exists, just now with a different name. Remember Namco? Remember Bandai? Why not merge the 2 together? Now we have Namco Bandai Games, which then got changed to Bandai Namco Games, which then got changed to Bandai Namco Entertainment. Thank God they changed that 3 times. Squaresoft and Enix, both well known for Japanese RPGs, merged to become Square Enix. Konami acquired Hudson Soft and basically just absorbed it into the whole company later down the line, killing off the name. Well, I mean, at least one of Hudson's franchises lived on after the merger. That just shows that sometimes a studio is no more just due to restructuring. Nintendo EAD was the development studio behind mainline Mario, Zelda, Animal Crossing, all the primary Nintendo games, and they no longer exist. But that's just because Nintendo restructured their development studios by merging Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development and Nintendo Software Planning and Development into one in-house studio, Nintendo Entertainment Planning and Development, Nintendo EPD. Now, when a studio is acquired by a bigger company, that must mean that studio is safe from being shut down, right? What are you, stupid? It is heartbreaking and frustrating to see a studio get bought out or started up just to make a few games and then get shut down a few years later. And it's something that happens shockingly frequently. Bizarre Creations made Blur and Geometry Wars, shut down by Activision. Lionhead Studios made the Fable series, shut down by Microsoft. Capcom Vancouver made the Dead Rising game, shut down by Capcom. Guerrilla Cambridge made Killzone Mercenary, shut down by Sony. Blackbox made Skate and Need for Speed games, shut down by EA. Maxis Emeryville made The Sims and SimCity, shut down by EA. Visceral Games made Dead Space, shut down by EA. You see a pattern here? It's just, why even buy these studios if you have them make a few games and then shut them down and lay off employees? These are giant corporations always looking for new employment. Surely they could have relocated a lot of these employees to other subsidiaries they own. Like, most of the time a studio is shut down when the games they made underperformed and they're no longer profitable, but that's not really a good majority of the employees' fault, so why not relocate them elsewhere in the company? But sure, everything happens for a reason. A lot of studios end up getting merged. The studios that got shut down were because the games they were making weren't selling. The parent company didn't see much worth with keeping them around. I get that. It's incredibly sad to see a company that made legitimately good games close down and to see employees get laid off. That's never fun to see, but these companies are trying to run a business. Most of the time, I doubt the CEOs say, man, I'm just dying to shut that studio down today. The studio shutdowns are mostly done for strategical reasons. These companies are businesses at the end of the day, and sometimes they have to make tough calls that negatively affect a lot of people. It's sad, but it has to happen sometimes. There's that, and then there's Activision laying off 800 employees to cut costs when the CEO makes $30 million a year. What the hell?
So it's pretty easy to fail at succeeding in the video game industry, so let's dive into a few key examples of studios that succeeded at failing.
Disney Interactive Studios was one that just kind of shut down out of nowhere, and it hit me hard. I love Disney Magic Artist Studio on the PC. Of course, they primarily made Disney-related games, and they also dabbled in the pure market, but their last major project was Disney Infinity, developed by Avalanche. This was a part of the whole Toys to Life trend Skylanders started, where you buy toy figures you can scan into the game. But Disney Infinity used figures of pre-established Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars icons, which you'd think would translate to a bigger success. Well, it was a big success, but not big enough for Disney, because by Disney Infinity 3.0, Disney announced they were abruptly canceling the line of games and figures. This obviously wasn't a long time coming, because plans for a fourth game and new figures in general were already being developed. Of course, Disney is a smart corporation. I think they could see that Toys to Life was a dying fad, and it was smart to pull out of it before they had a flop on their hands with Disney Infinity 4.0. It was a dying market. Why try to make more money from it and have a bunch of unsold figures and games on your hand? And after canceling the future of the Disney Infinity franchise, they closed the entirety of Disney Interactive Studios just to really stick it to us. Disney Interactive suffered major losses over the years, and while Disney Infinity was enough of a success to help the division stay afloat, the writing was on the wall that Toys to Life was fading away, and with a future without Disney Infinity, Disney Interactive didn't have a reason to exist in the company's eyes. Why develop their own games when they could just license their brands out to video game publishers like EA? That was a great idea. That's actually the same reasoning behind Disney closing LucasArts down. They bought out Lucasfilm in late 2012 and then closed their video game division in April of 2013, laying off a good chunk of employees. LucasArts made some of the most beloved adventure games out there, with some big names in the pipeline at the time like Star Wars 1313. And to just see that all go away almost immediately after being bought out was disheartening to fans. The reasoning for shutting LucasArts down was simply because Disney found the prospect of licensing out their IPs to other game developers to be more appealing. That was a great idea. Speaking of LucasArts and their adventure games, a company that was seen as the modern equivalent to them also happens to be one of the biggest company shutdowns in recent memory. Telltale Games. Now, these guys have been around for a while. I initially heard of them when it was announced they were making Back to the Future the game in 2010. It was a point-and-click adventure game that basically acted like a fourth Back to the Future movie. They were mostly known for doing stuff like that, taking well-established media franchises and turning them into episodic, story-based adventure games. They worked on a bunch of titles, but really hit the big time in 2012. Telltale's The Walking Dead was a monumental success critically and commercially. It told a great story, popularized the episodic release strategy, rejuvenated the story-based graphic adventure genre, and it came out at the height of the Walking Dead franchise's popularity, which definitely helped things out. Everything was in this game's favor. Telltale really had The Walking Dead to thank for its mainstream success, and also eventual demise. They just picked up too many projects and pumped out too many games in such short periods of time. Yet ever since 2012, their games never really improved since The Walking Dead. They really didn't evolve along with the industry and instead just kept doing what worked back in 2012. Episodic story-based adventure games based on popular media franchises. They would generally have 3 series running at the same time each and every year, which was just a bit much for most to keep up with. The formula was showing fatigue and oversaturation, and in late 2018 it was announced that Telltale would be closing down, right when they were in the middle of releasing the final season of The Walking Dead and had a fair amount of upcoming projects in the works. At least Skybound Games came in to finish up the final season of The Walking Dead, but it's still sad to see Telltale gone. The closure really came out of nowhere for me. I wasn't expecting it at all, but when I actually thought about it for a second, it made too much sense. Like, I remember everybody playing The Walking Dead when that came out, and a few of their other games after that were pretty big, but by 2018, I just didn't hear anybody really talking about Telltale's games. They truly made some great stuff, but when it was obvious that they had to change things to keep up with the industry, it was too late. However, I'd make the argument that one of the most famous downfalls of a company was the
Wednesdays on E!
Today, breeding season.
I will not be doing that.
8 celebrity kids.
My dad is Shaquille O'Neal.
Your dad is worldwide.
0 life skills.
Oh my God, what are you doing?
Relatively famous ranch rules. Wednesdays at 9, only on E! This is why they don't let pseudo-Europeans who lived in China who come from Portland try.
First thing I'm gonna get you to do, sort the negative attitude out. You're a strong man, okay? You're strong. Turn the frown upside down.
Rowan, we're gonna die! We're gonna die, Rowan!
Good luck, adventurer!
When I think THQ, I think licensed games for the GameCube. Some good, some bad, most completely mediocre, but still a worthwhile presence in the industry. When it came to the original franchises, they had Saints Row, Destroy All Humans, The Blob, Darksiders. Good stuff definitely, just not the biggest names, but they did have licenses for Pixar and Nickelodeon games for a while, so that kinda made up for the lack of notoriety. Like I said, the GameCube era was really when THQ was firing at all cylinders. Licensed kids games were pretty popular back then. During the Xbox 360, PS3, and Wii era though, that's when they started to struggle, and that was partially because THQ said, you know what Nintendo's gonna do in 2 years? Yeah, let's fail before they do. The U-Draw tablet, released in 2010, it was a drawing tablet for the Wii, a pretty solid idea overall, but I think THQ really poured too much into this one. They could have gone away with just the tablet and the drawing software bundled in. But no, they made a bunch of games that required this thing. I never really thought the U-Draw tablet was worthy of being an accessory that should be mandatory for certain games. Like, that's something Nintendo does for their own console with stuff like the Wii Balance Board or Motion Plus. You really think THQ was able to do that themselves? U-Draw games were mostly licensed kids titles, and I feel like a lot of parents that just wanted to give their kids some Kung Fu Panda 2 action on the Wii were disappointed when they realized, oh, we need this third-party drawing tablet from some failing company. But really, the U-Draw problem started coming in at full force when THQ decided to release it for the PS3 and Xbox 360, yikes. Put this sign up anywhere, you'll scare somebody. While the U-Draw tablet on the Wii did okay, the other consoles flopped hard. U-Draw wasn't a big enough success in my opinion to warrant spreading it to other consoles that primarily attracted an entirely different audience compared to the Wii. This tablet was one of the biggest contributions to THQ's bankruptcy, but other factors were definitely still at play here. Licensed kids games were starting to become less and less of a thing, like just think about how many there were on previous consoles compared to the Xbox 360 onwards. Especially a few years ago on modern platforms, like without Acclaim and THQ pumping out movie tie-in games, it made Activision releasing some garbage Ghostbusters game really stick out. If I had to guess why licensed games aren't as prevalent now, it may be due to development costs being pretty expensive for HD consoles. But we have been seeing more tie-in games recently, and oh my god, I think they found a way to avoid high development costs, and it's to not have development costs. It's genius. But licensed games were THQ's bread and butter, so when those weren't doing well, they tried to buckle down and focus on more mature hardcore titles. It didn't really work out because most of their games were just pretty average. Sure, stuff like Darksiders and Saints Row have their fans, but when they were mainly banking on the game Homefront to save them from shutting down, I think that shows THQ without the tie-in games wasn't really much at all. They filed for bankruptcy in early 2013, auctioning off their assets. Games in development like South Park: The Stick of Truth were bought up by Ubisoft, and franchises like the WWE series were bought by 2K. Currently though, THQ is back in some form. Nordic Games originally bought up the majority of THQ's original franchises, and later in 2016 bought the THQ name and now operate under THQ Nordic just because the name THQ is still pretty iconic, especially compared to the name Nordic Games. Their entire game plan seems to be to acquire every single B-tier game franchise ever conceived. THQ Nordic will probably acquire the state of Nevada soon. When a game company goes under, it blows. Tons of people lose their job, games may be canceled, franchises are in limbo. It's never a good thing when a solid studio goes out of business. At least there's potential that franchises will be bought up by other better companies, employees will get new better jobs incredibly quickly, or the studio will be merged with a bigger one and nothing really changes outside of the studio's name. While everything happens for a reason, a game company shutting down is always one of the sadder things to read in the news.
And there you go. Listen to me talk for 13 minutes was step 1 of our 9-step plan. We only have 8 more to go until this bankruptcy meter goes even further down. I can't go through with this. We need to make money quick. We're selling soup now. It always works. Hey y'all, Scott here. I've rediscovered one of my core talents, owning a Sharpie. Should have patented this when I had the chance. Portable video games, allowing you to play games in inappropriate situations. They make loitering a whole lot less obvious and give you something to do at funerals. Thank God for their existence. What would I do on the bus without them, human? No, they didn't make Wario Land 4 for me to talk to people, I have to play it. Portable gaming seems like it was only a possibility long after gaming in general started to gain traction, but in reality, while video games started to become a consumer product in the late 60s, early 70s, portable electronic game devices started appearing by the mid-70s with stuff like Mattel Auto Race. Every timeline starts with Mattel Auto Race. Ever since, the idea of playing video games on the go has been just as prevalent as playing video games in general. Portability definitely forces graphical capabilities to take a hit, but that doesn't make handheld gaming any less amazing. These devices let me not talk to people. And the company most known for portable gaming is without a doubt Nintendo. Did you think I was gonna say Folgers? The Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, Nintendo 3DS, Nintendo Switch all have been leaders of the dedicated handheld market and have cemented Nintendo as the portable game company for the past 3 decades. Whenever a new company enters the ring, all they say is, that's cute. They strike a balance between affordability and horsepower they deem as good enough. They may not put out the most technologically advanced systems, but they more than make up for it with their library of games and asking price alone. It's weird to think Nintendo's best successes come from their portable business, but whenever they dangle nostalgia in front of our faces, it's mostly for their home console stuff. You don't see them talk about Super Mario Land 2 as much as Super Mario Bros. 2, even when Land 2 was actually more successful. I assume it's because home console games age better than handheld ones. I just find it odd because when you look at their history, Nintendo's bread and butter has always been portable games, evidenced by the fact that their first big success in the video game market was just that. The Game & Watch wasn't Nintendo's first foray into video games, but it was their first major success in video games, and it all started back in 1980. Humanity must have been really bored before that. Game & Watch was a series of handheld games produced by Nintendo, but you already know that. What was my last paragraph about? Prior to the mid-60s, Nintendo was primarily into playing cards it is. Starting out as a playing card company, then moving on to taxis justifiably, Nintendo dipped their toes into various markets until settling on toys due to the ingenious of one of their employees, Gunpei Yokoi. He designed the Ultra Hand, a toy where the fun lies with what you can grab with it. This toy's success led Nintendo to focusing mostly on fun and games from 1966 onward, and with the inception of video games being a thing, they obviously had to take a whack at it. In 1975, they released EVR Race into arcades. Have spit games more iconic than that. Well, EVR Race might not have lit the world on fire, but that's okay. Nintendo followed it up with Shooting Trainer. We're overdue at this point. That's where Skyhawk comes into the picture. I would tell you the impact it left, but I got a letter from everybody. Best way to put it, Nintendo's video game ventures in the 1970s weren't all failures. Some of them did pretty well. For example, the Color TV game systems were released, fundamentally dedicated Pong machines, selling a couple million units combined. Some arcade games did pretty well, but at the end of the day, none of them were really runaway successes, and nothing left much of an impact. But Gunpei Yokoi struck again, as one day he noticed a businessman fiddling around with a calculator on the train out of sheer boredom. Surely more could be done than just spelling words on a display like this. Because of this very moment, Yokoi devised a pocket-sized device that could play a game while also being useful in other ways, like acting as a clock. And with that, he would design the next video game product of Nintendo's. Its name? Well, I know what Nintendo would name bread now. The first Game & Watch unit hit store shelves on April 28th, 1980, titled Ball in Japan, but here in North America it was labeled as Toss Up. In fact, the initial North American release wasn't called Game & Watch at all. This was before Nintendo had much of a presence outside of Japan, so they worked with a distributor who labeled the units as Timeout games. See, I give this name but at least it's upfront about what you're getting. What kid wants to play a Timeout? Ball is a pretty basic game and set the standard for what you could expect out of a typical Game & Watch release. First off, the build quality is phenomenal. This thing feels like a fine piece of jewelry, like an antique pocket watch. There's this feeling of elegance with them, and I'm not really hyperbolizing here. They never felt cheap or just like little games to keep the kids busy. You can tell they designed these with that businessman on the train in mind. These don't look out of place in a grown man's hand comparative to a child's. Game & Watch games were truly made for everybody. A couple watch batteries later and we're in business. We have Game A and Game B to choose from. Game A is all about juggling two balls at once. This is lame hell. Game B is much faster with one ball thrown in the picture. This is neat hell. It's pretty obvious Game B is way more fun. Now, fun enough to never turn off? That's tricky. These games don't have an on and off switch. They last quite a long time. You could go anywhere from 6 months to a year on just one set of batteries from light to heavy use. This is obviously because of the watch portion of the unit. You don't really turn off clocks, but just because I can see this game in standby mode all the time, I feel like I'm doing something wrong by not turning it off. It's just puzzling. They went, the battery life is great and it has a clock. We don't need an off switch. We can set the time. There it is. I'm done.
New spicy lovers pizza from Pizza Hut. Hurts so good. With its spicy marinara and sliced red chilies. It's like a roundhouse kick to the taste buds. How's it looking? Don't be bashful with the fiery flakes now. I want it to be real spicy.
I haven't started yet.
Okay, I'm ready. The new spicy lovers pizza. Get it while it's hot. You want respect? Red chilies get you respect. No one outpieces the Hut.
At SteelSeries, we make gaming gear so you can be anything you want, except one thing: ordinary. Fight the biggest bad guy you can find. Create something nobody's seen before. Now that's beautiful. Why waste your ammo on this guy? He's so good at games he just nades himself to death. It's up to you how far you go, but whatever you do, go for glory.
On Sci-Fi's Resident Alien,
I'm here to kill everyone.
The only thing stranger than an alien pretending to be human are humans being humans.
Hello, pretty lady.
They are annoying flesh monkeys.
Set your DDR for Resident Alien, Wednesdays at 9 on Sci-Fi.
Surprisingly, there's not much to a video game made out of a calculator screen. Pretty Pretty much all Game & Watch games were simple high-score based ROMs. These were games of endurance, see how long you can go for. I, for one, find it interesting how much they can get out of such simple technology. There's only so much you can do with these LCD screens in terms of making interactive video game experiences, but they truly thought outside the box with these games and made very enjoyable time killers. Now, Nintendo kept releasing new Game & Watch units consistently for the next few years and would regularly release them in new waves and series. The first series was the Silver series. The games inside were all different, but the shell containing them looked pretty similar across all of them. Some may have had different control layouts, but they were all pretty much the same shtick as the game Ball. The next series to follow was the Gold series. Guess what the difference was? After the Gold series was the Widescreen series. Again, take a shot in the dark. All of the games produced under the first three series had nearly identical builds though. They were all rectangles with rectangles in the rectangles. That wasn't until the next series, the Multi-Screen series. Alright, first one to answer wins. What does this remind you of?
A clam!
It's pretty obvious the multi-screen Game & Watch units were the inspiration for what would become the Nintendo DS, not only because of the dual screens, but the clamshell design. On top of that, these units were the first time Nintendo utilized their traditional D-pad to move a character in one of 8 directions. And if we want to extend these plagiarism allegations even further, various DS games utilize the system on its side like a book, and what do we have here? You son of a bitch plagiarist, what if they notice? A revised widescreen lineup was released later, and tabletop Game & Watches were the hot new thing in 1983. These were obviously responses to Coleco's tabletop line of mini arcades, and to me, they sort of missed the point of the original Game & Watch units. They're so bulky and not nearly as classy as the other ones. You whip this out at a funeral, you're gonna be the life of the party. Well, at this point, Nintendo was trying to innovate with the Game & Watch brand, and with each new series, they were trying to one-up the last, evident by the Panorama series. It uses a mirror to project color overlays onto the LCD graphics, so you get more detailed visuals. The Super Color series followed and had just straight-up color visuals. The Micro Versus series were multiplayer Game & Watch units with 2 detachable controllers. The Crystal Screen series had a see-through transparent screen. If the Game & Watch kept going after this, I'm sure we would have seen one that told us we were pretty. Yeah, there were a lot more types of Game & Watch than I initially thought, but the older series would still get new releases even when new series were announced. I mean, the final original Game & Watch release in 1991, Mario the Juggler, was a part of the new widescreen series, which got its start in 1982. Watching these games being played doesn't do them justice because this looks really lame. You really have to get these in your hands to fully appreciate them. I have a couple of them in my collection and they're great. Once Nintendo actually started releasing character-based video games that were hits, they were sure to release Game & Watch units starring those same characters. Of course, we got some Donkey Kong ones. Here I have Donkey Kong 2. What? This is the only game called Donkey Kong 2. Of course, the sequel to the original Donkey Kong was Donkey Kong Jr., and then they moved right on over to Donkey Kong 3. The Game & Watch game decided to cut the bullshit because this is by all accounts heavily inspired by Donkey Kong Jr. in the arcades. This is pretty much just a renamed version of Donkey Kong Jr. But they already made a Donkey Kong Jr. Game & Watch before this. What the hell is this thing? You know I had to own at least one multi-screen unit, and yeah, the resemblance is uncanny. It has this soft lock lid to it that stops the screen from flopping out at random, I guess, which does remind me of the official Game Boy cartridge cases. I never knew there were so many different ways to rip yourself off. And finally, boxing, one of the Micro Versus units. This is cool. It comes in a chunky box and you can play by yourself or another player by extracting the control pads. Come on, this is amazing. Now this was re-released as Punch-Out in North America after the NES title experienced tons of success, but boxing and Punch-Out Game & Watches are the exact same outside of the title being changed. Nintendo released roughly 60 unique Game & Watch games from 1980 to 1991, and while they vary in terms of themes and gameplay, they all have that Game & Watch feel to them. There were a ton of LCD games throughout the years from companies like Mattel and Tiger, and on the surface, there's not much different between a Game & Watch game and any other LCD game, but it's the replayability and weirdly enough, the graphical style of these things that make them stand out. I know some might be asking, what graphical style? There's something oddly charming about the graphics here. They have such a distinct style to them. You barely see any detail on these characters, but their expressions, the way they move, and how they would convey so much in such little graphics. It honestly impresses me how much character Nintendo was able to inject into single-screen games that have more in common with a calculator than anything else. Nintendo created a lot of Game & Watch games with generic names and setups. The themes and style remind me a lot of animation from the 1920s and 30s. Fire, bounce the people from the burning building to safety. Manhole, cover up the holes for people to walk over. Greenhouse, exterminate the bugs before they get to your plants. Many of these games have the same shtick. You have to juggle multiple things at once until you screw up. But they're still kind of addictive. Once you start playing a game
Game & Watch game, I mean, yeah, you're not gonna play it for hours on end, but I guarantee you'll keep playing until you lose. Nintendo repurposed many of their IPs that were successful throughout the 80s as Game & Watch units. Donkey Kong, Mario, Zelda, and they got the license to do games based on Disney properties, Snoopy, Popeye. They pretty much did everything they could with this brand back then. Over 43 million combined were sold. It's obvious to say the Game & Watch did pretty well. But of course, when was the last Game & Watch released? That's right, not yesterday, so why did they stop making them? I always hated that thing, it didn't have Snoopy Tennis. While these did well, they obviously had their limitations. There's only so much you can do with this type of screen. Pretty much all the graphics that could possibly be displayed needed to fit on this one screen. You couldn't make different types of games outside of endurance rounds. Nintendo released the Game Boy in 1989. That used different game cartridges and weren't limited to this. They were full video game experiences. The screen could scroll! The Game & Watch didn't serve much of a purpose with the Game Boy taking off. Sure, buying one was cheaper than a Game Boy, but it was obvious the Game Boy was the better investment. Now, other companies, specifically Tiger Electronics, carried on the LCD game legacy throughout the 90s. These were terrible. Nintendo knew what LCD games were capable of, and for sure what they weren't. They never really tried to make Game & Watch games something they weren't. They tailor-made them to be fun even with the limitations of this screen. Tiger just kind of barfed out whatever they could. There wasn't as much love or attention put into these things. Most of their games consisted of defeat this enemy until you get bored. Game & Watch games were made with so much more care and so much more love, and you can tell that with how much Nintendo cares about its legacy. In 1997, Nintendo released Game & Watch Gallery on the Game Boy, starting a series of 4 titles. Each one contained multiple remakes of Game & Watch games, both in their original forms, just remade on a Game Boy screen, and in modern forms, this time utilizing Mario characters and some new mechanics here and there. These modern versions do a great job contextualizing what the originals were trying to convey. Even if most were fairly understandable, some games you just said, alright. Whatever you say, Nintendo. The Gallery games are great, and I'd recommend them to anybody who wants to try these things out. I think the modern remakes make it easier to appreciate how they were able to do these exact games with such garbage hardware. Some Game & Watch games were later re-released as mini keychain games in 1998, the Nintendo Mini Classics. Yeah, these are Game & Watch games. Mr. Game & Watch has been a staple of the Super Smash Bros. Series ever since Melee in 2001, and each of his moves reference an old-school Game & Watch title. The game Manhole was released as a card for the Game Boy Advance's e-reader. Just swipe the card to play Manhole. 2 volumes of Game & Watch collection for the Nintendo DS were released through the Club Nintendo loyalty program and included some of the multi-screen games. Not remade like in the Gallery titles, just the original. It's kinda lame, but whatever. Various standard games were made available on the Nintendo DSi shop, and let's not even get into all the references Nintendo crams into their games. So much of Nintendo's core modern DNA is derived from the Game & Watch. The D-pad, dual screens, the kickstand, instant 2-player multiplayer, and weirdly enough, when you sit down and play these old Game & Watch games, you can get a whiff of that Nintendo charm, taking a simple concept and turning it into a fun and charming experience. Of course, with that being said, I don't think anybody nowadays would answer the question of, hey, do you want to play a Nintendo game with yeah, Donkey Kong 2?
Wednesdays on E!
Today, breeding season.
I will not be doing that. 8 celebrity kids.
My dad is Shaquille O'Neal.
Your dad is worldwide. 0 life skills.
Oh my God! What are you doing?
Relatively famous ranch rules. Wednesdays at 9, only on E!
Bam, 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 bam. Hello and welcome to.
Obviously, no. No.
Whose child is this?
No, obviously, no.
Oh my lord.
The esports updates. No! This is why they don't let pseudo-Europeans who lived in China who come from Portland drive.
On Sci-Fi's Resident Alien,
I'm here to kill everyone.
the only thing stranger than an alien pretending to be human are humans being humans.
Hello, pretty lady.
They are annoying flesh monkeys.
Set your DVR for Resident Alien, Wednesdays at 9 on Sci-Fi.
Hey y'all, Scott here. E3 2018, you say? Never heard of him. I'm more so interested in demonstrating the potential of hardware. Let's see if this iron passes the durability test. Gonna put that down as a TBA. Tech demos, demonstrations of hardware potential that most of the time have no business being real games. Whenever new hardware is revealed, saying it has 4 gallons of teraflops lodged in it means nothing if we can't see it getting put to good use. Developers have to cobble together something that people can look at and instantly understand just how good games can look, sound, feel, play, all that. These are some of the most interesting parts of a new console generation. These are what could be, rather than what is most of the time. I think it's fair to say the vast majority of tech demos never amount to anything and don't become full-fledged video games. They're just here to visualize a hardware's tech specs. But that's not to say they can't become full games or elements from them can't be used on other games. However, developers just have a hankering to tease and decide to make tech demos that look like games people have been begging for, which can be just absolutely cruel if that game isn't actually in development. Take, for example, a Zelda tech demo for the GameCube showcasing a sword fight between Link and Ganondorf. Who's gonna win? A Zelda game for babies, that's who! We know now that The Wind Waker is a fantastic Zelda game, but back then people were expecting Zelda on the GameCube to look mature, epic, a bit dark, and they got this. People were upset because Nintendo showed them this thing they really wanted and didn't give it to them. At first. Tech demos can be pretty cool, but sometimes they end up just disappointing fans. So I will pose the question, what makes a good tech demo? Well, let's take a look at various tech demos from the past and see if we can figure that out for ourselves. Now we can't just talk tech demos and end it there. Today I am introducing the Tech Demometer, patent pending. Each tech demo we look at will be ranked on a scale of 1 to 3 based on completely inconsistent judgment. Don't overthink the ratings, let's just do it. Oh my god, are they remaking Final Fantasy VII in HD? I think they're remaking Final Fantasy VII in HD! They're remaking Final Fantasy VII in HD! This tech demo was shown off at E3 2005 as a showcase for the PlayStation 3 hardware and is a remake of the opening section of Final Fantasy VII. It's just a short clip and honestly doesn't seem that much better than something from the PlayStation 2 or Xbox at the time. Actually, let me rephrase that. Stuff like character models and overall detail in the world is definitely early PS3 quality, but nothing here screams, oh yeah, this shows the power of the PlayStation 3. It felt like a PS2 era cutscene running in real time. Impressive, but not jaw-dropping. All this did was make fans sit there and ask, so when's the Final Fantasy VII remake coming out? Tech demos don't have to become a game that actually releases commercially, but look at this and tell me, oh yeah, just a tech demo, has no business being a real game. The fact that this wasn't linked to any potential remake kinda makes me ask the question, what was the point in making this if all it did was end up disappointing fans? Sure, it makes sense to take something people are familiar with and enhance it this much to show the leap in graphical capabilities, but the way this looks and the way it's presented heavily implies this can be and should be more than a tech demo. Well, 10 years after the tech demo, a Final Fantasy VII remake was officially announced for the PlayStation 4. And just like the tech demo, nothing has happened since. It just seems like this thing has been crab walking in development hell. This tech demo did its job to excite people, but for all the wrong reasons. I don't think it got people excited for the power of the PlayStation 3, it got people excited over a game that didn't exist. Hey, Mario Kart XXL, I see this was in the era where they were naming tech demos after TV dinners. This wasn't a demo created by Nintendo, instead by Denaris Entertainment Software, somebody's favorite developer. This was an unauthorized prototype showing how the GBA could render 2 background layers at once, plus also utilizing fully rendered 3D characters. I gotta be honest, this looks pretty impressive for the Game Boy Advance. I don't think anybody knows if this was actually pitched to Nintendo at any point, but regardless, never became a game, still cool though and really seems to utilize the GBA hardware well. This This is an interesting one. When the PS4 was initially revealed, this demo of an old man's face was shown, but it was at E3 2013 that a full tech demo showcasing the old man was revealed, entitled The Dark Sorcerer, developed by Quantic Dream, who developed this downer of an experience, so it's surprising to see them make this tech demo that is completely self-aware and is more of a comedy. I gotta be honest, this is one of the most fun tech demos ever made. It has fun with itself and doesn't come off as teasing fans or unimpressive. It's interesting on its own, but doesn't need to be a full game. It's both a short film and a tech demo. Give this one the full points it deserves. Back when the Kinect was introduced as Project Natal, an infamous tech demo was shown alongside it, presented by Peter Molyneux himself. Project Milo, a demo that involved artificial intelligence so intelligent it was artificial. Basically, you could talk to a video game character and he'd talk right back effortlessly. Maybe a little too effortlessly.
You've got to put these goggles on.
Goggles?
Put them on like this.
Notice what she did. This wasn't acted. She felt the need to reach down.
That's because it's acted. I always had a feeling this was a bit faked. Like, have you ever used a Kinect on the Xbox 360 before? The thing had a hard time figuring out if I had a body. You're expecting me to think it could have a realistic conversation with me? Also, look how fast the Kinect scans in this piece of paper. Like, no, that can't be. Listen, this was and still is conceptually really cool, and the fact is there that the original concept of Kinect was much more technologically advanced than the retail product. But this is the only instance where we saw Project Milo in action, so it's hard to believe that it was really that immersive and expansive. But I'll give it 2 points for being pretty cool in the grand scheme of things, and being some pretty cool use of the hardware. Back when the Game Boy Advance was coming out, Nintendo created this demo that is a remake of Yoshi's Story on the Nintendo 64. A Nintendo 64 game running on a Game Boy Advance? Not really. Like I said, it's obviously a remake of the game that runs on the Game Boy Advance. The presentation has been downgraded a fair amount, but I gotta be honest, this is still pretty impressive. It's like how Nintendo remade Super Mario 64 on the Nintendo DS just to prove that the system can do 3D. The problem is that game is tart, while this one never came out and is just as, if not more impressive than 64 DS, just because, hey, it's basically playing a Nintendo 64 game on the hardware that preceded the DS. That's pretty cool. This never became a real life thing, but unlike the Final Fantasy VII tech demo, this demo wasn't this big extravaganza that was a complete overhaul of how the original game was. This was just proving that the Game Boy Advance was more powerful than many may have assumed, and I think it did its job fairly well. Back when Nintendo was desperately trying to prove the Wii U gamepad's worth, E3 2014 brought with it 2 Wii U tech demos focusing on the 2-screen dynamic. One was Project Guard, a tower defense game where you had to swap between certain camera angles to stop enemies from harming your base. The other was Project Giant Robot, where you're a Project Giant Robot and you're doing specific missions in a city. Guard was turned into the game Star Fox Guard, where it was basically the same but with a Star Fox theme, and Giant Robot was never officially turned into a full game. However, it's speculated that the Nintendo Labo Robot Kit is what became of the project. I thought Guard was kind of a cute use of the gamepad, but Giant Robot always looked like a clunk fest. They worked pretty well as tech demos, but here's the problem. They came out 2 years after the console released. That definitely takes away a lot of the oomph out of a tech demo. Oh, Conquer the Squirrel. Definitely at the top of everybody's top 10 alcoholic video game squirrels list is of course the star of the cult classic Nintendo 64 game Conker's Bad Fur Day. After Microsoft purchased the developer Rare, the Conker franchise hasn't been touched all too much. A remake of Bad Fur Day was thrown onto the original Xbox, but other than that, the series has remained relatively dormant. And then, yeah, Young Conker was a tech demo created to demonstrate the tech behind Microsoft HoloLens. Using augmented reality, the thing is actually quite impressive. Other than that, it's a bit of a spit in the face to Conker fans. It's one of the few representations the series has had in the past decade, and it's not at all how fans want to see this character or play something he's in. They could have built this demo around any other character or series, a series that has had more releases or support as of late. But no, make it a cult classic that fans desperately want to see return and make it an augmented reality demo. Neat. And while we're on the topic of Rare IP tech demos, what the hell was this? Taking Banjo-Kazooie and making it a motion-controlled experience? I don't know what you would call this. Mario tech demos. Let's take a look at these bad boys. Well, Mario 128 seems to be the most well-known. Made to show the power of the GameCube, the title alludes to this being a sequel to Mario 64, but after further inspection, yeah, no. Cool tech for back in the day, though. Peach's Castle was a demo, again for the GameCube, and was just a large tour of the castle. Neat. Luigi's Mansion was once used for tech demo purposes before initially being revealed as a game. You could play with Mario and Wario's face on the DS when it was initially shown. New Super Mario Bros. Meek, God, I thought these tech demos were gonna be way more interesting than they turned out. Holy look at all the ping pong balls! Now I gotta get an original Xbox. What better hardware to try to prove the worth of than the Sega 32X, the 32-bit add-on for the Sega Genesis. Here's some rad 90s graphics that Sega threw out there to show just how powerful the 32X is, and whoa, this is literally just a bunch of primitive 3D junk flying at us. This demo knows how to rivet. Now you may have noticed that most of these never reach a solid 3 in the tech demometer, probably because tech demos are never meant to be perfect. They're interesting parts of history, and when new hardware is unveiled, it's cool to see what it's capable of. But it's all about the games that are, you know, actually real. After all this, what does make a good tech demo? And I think the simple answer is something that showcases a hardware's potential without toying with fans' hearts. Most of the time, tech demos aren't representative of any final product, so they can mainly be seen as harmless. They aren't like a yearbook quote which is stuck with you for life. Of course, when I was in the room with the yearbook committee, they took the last thing that I said as my yearbook quote, and when you're in a room full of weirdos, that's how you get a quote that becomes, "Stop licking my neck!"